I see this as a film about healing and a film about understanding what information we need to be looking at in order to help ourselves heal. And so those stories of courage are a big part of our film. How to adjust your lifestyle to maximize your health. And our film focuses in on people who have sat in an oncologist's office and have been told some of the worst news that you could be told.
And for you guys to put together that powerhouse pantheon of people in this industry that need to be heard.
We've done all of these interviews. We've interviewed, I think it's 11 researchers and medical doctors. He's just like us in the sense that he's got all of this incredible information about how cancer cells function, but he feels like people aren't listening. And he had the courage to say to himself, you know what, I'm going to go home and I'm going to look around on my own. I'm going to dig through some of these scientific papers. I'm going to go on YouTube. I'm going to understand what is this disease at its core and what other research, what other developing knowledge is out there. The film has been shot in the United States, Canada, Turkey, India, and Australia. So that in itself has been a mission. There are a lot of people who are already keyed into the keto and carnivore and fasting communities, and so we want to make sure we get it to them. We're coming to the end of the production. We hope to be done with the film at the end of March of this year, so another few weeks, and then we'll begin the release strategy.
In a really sick cardiac patient, if you only have a cholesterol of 50, you're in big trouble.
Because that aorta opens up, you're dead in seconds. You don't live long if that thing ruptures.
He said, Lindsay, this is about as bad as you see. When you look on the inside, you're morbidly obese.
Fat is not supposed to be in some places of the body. Fat is supposed to be stored in fat storage.
Have we been describing this as radiologists? No.
Most doctors will look at, oh, this number's high, here's a pill for you.
Essentially, he has a death sentence.
What did our ancestors 500,000 years ago eat?
We have limited food availability, and it would be unnatural to not go in a state of ketosis.
Now we have foods that are just rich with fructose, damages mitochondria.
Know what you're actually putting in your body. Learn to count your macronutrients.
When they explained to me where I had gone wrong, that's when I realized why I was so sick.
You can reverse prediabetes and type 2 diabetes by putting somebody on a ketogenic diet.
Every patient deserves the best shot possible. That incorporates the best diet possible, which we think is a ketogenic diet.
Food is my medicine, but the right kind of food.
Every so often, there's things that come out that changes the game. In my health journey, in the Meat of the Matter creation, we've been trying to speak out against other alternatives, health alternatives, human health, ancestral health. Brian's here, the hunter-gatherer mindset, who is a very valued friend and ally in this quest. We've all been trying to scream from the rooftops a message. And, you know, whether you're a vegan, vegetarian, carnivore, it doesn't matter. You're a human being. And we have the distinct honor and privilege to have Kyle come on here. He has been part of a documentary called Keto Is Key. And I think the name says it all. And just from a personal, from when Brian actually introduced us to your documentary, the trailer that you just saw, all these doctors have one commonality. All these niche lifestyles, it's one common thing. And I think you guys hit it on the head. Keto is key. And a lot of people get scared away from ketosis and they don't understand the real power of being in nutritional ketosis or being in ketosis. And I think we get lost in all the dogma and the translations. And for you guys to put together that powerhouse pantheon of people in this industry that need to be heard. And I have a personal connection to Dr. Thomas Seyfried, and I know Kyle does as well. I just spent the morning listening to Kyle live on the carnivore community, which we value and support huge. We're all in this together. Your story is quite remarkable, Kyle, and how you came about knowing Dr. Thomas Seyfried. And before we get into the movie side, just first of all, thanks for coming on and joining us today, because we're excited to have you.
It's a pleasure, Tony and Brian. And I think, one thing I've noticed from getting deeper into this keto and carnivore community, we're kind of like, two different communities, but linked as well, is how welcoming everyone's been and how enthusiastic people are to share what they know. So thank you. I'm happy to be here.
That's probably the most important thing, is that we're all in the same gang, regardless of feelings and what's been in the past, being optimally healthy and achieving true humanness. There's connections there. And I think we get lost, and it's nice to have everybody sort of come together, because we're here on this planet. All we're trying to do is just get the message out. Kyle, I heard your story this morning, but your connection to this documentary is it's interesting how you came to be. Maybe you can just sort of lead us into it, and then we'll get into a few more questions about that.
Yes, sure. And I suppose a lot of folks will have heard me earlier on the previous interview that we'll link to, and that people hear through Brian, Hunter Gatherer Mindset, the Instagram account. But
yeah, I was listening. Kyle.
My mom was diagnosed with glioblastoma at the beginning of 2024. And she 3 days later underwent a craniotomy, which is a brain surgery to try to remove as much of the tumor as possible. Glioblastoma is a really, really difficult disease to manage because it grows spawns throughout the brain into many different sections. And so it's hard enough to go into the brain with precision and remove a tumor, but when the tumor is expanding different regions of the brain, it makes it even more difficult. She underwent a craniotomy 3 days after she was diagnosed. And then we found out quickly that glioblastoma patients only live an expected 8 to 15 months. So it's the deadliest cancer known to science. And in addition to pancreatic cancers, also has really negative prognosis as well. So I knew, and my family, we recognized right away that the standard of care, which is the surgical resection, the chemotherapy, and the radiation, wasn't going to help her. At best, she's going to live 15 months. So we started looking for alternatives. Alternatives sometimes can sound a little bit strange. I call it developing research. What's the new research that's out there that's better than what we established 50 years ago to treat cancer? And of course, if you have glioblastoma and new research, you're going to find the work of Dr. Thomas Seyfried. His book was published in 2012. It's called Metabolic Disease. Terrific book. Difficult for a lot of us, the laymen, to read, but you do your best. You open it up, you read a chapter, you use AI to try to help you interpret it. You look at some of his videos. He helps you along with it. I read the book. We did our best to implement metabolic therapy with my mom, but my mom was too sick, and the tumor, and I think this is an important message as well. It's like it's keto and carnivore. It's not a panacea, heal all, and you like a pill that you drop into your stomach and suddenly you're 15 years old and vital as could be again. Sometimes you're too sick. My mom had a tumor in the thalamus of the brain, and if you watch any if you read about the anatomy of the brain, you'll find out very quickly that the thalamus is a pivotal relay station for many different primal functions. We talked about like there's 4 of the 5 senses pass through the thalamus. It's just above the brainstem. So my mom was too sick, and she passed away just a few weeks after she was diagnosed. But I really the research, Dr. Seyfried's research, spoke to me, as it has spoken to so many others in this community and adjacent, because it's so logical. He looked back at the work of Otto Warburg from 100 years ago, who realized that cancer cells ferment glucose. And if that's the case, let's lower the glucose and let's restrict the cancer cell's ability to access that fuel. Thomas Seyfried, 80 years later, he's been doing this since 1985. Dr. Seyfried has been at Boston College since 1985. So more than 40 years now, he's been studying cancer cells. And he realized something that Otto Warburg didn't have the technology to notice, is that cancer cells also ferment glutamine. So Dr. Seyfried's protocol is predicated on lowering glucose and lowering glutamine. I talked about this a little bit before as well. You want to pulse the glutamine because glutamine is so pivotal in so many primal functions in our body, our immune system, our urea cycles, our ability to digest. So you have to pulse glutamine, keep it down briefly, let it come back. Pulse glutamine, keep it down briefly, let it come back. Meanwhile, you're always keeping the glucose low. And a lot of us in this community know how to do that. You can do it by fasting. You can do it by carnivore diet. You can do it with a calorie restriction. You can do it with a 2-to-1 ketogenic ratio. So I resonated so much with Dr. Seyfried's work that I reached out to him. I went up to Boston College to study under him for a semester. I sat in on his class. And with my production background, I come from a production background. I used to produce documentaries for the New York Yankees. I brought my equipment up to his lab and I started to interview him. And we launched his YouTube channel in October of 2024. Already, of course, been on many, many podcasts, but I thought it was important for him to launch his own channel. And so we did that at the end of 2024. And, Dr. Seyfried being not only the sort of, we'll call him industry famous guy that he is, he's also just so articulate and so interesting. He's so engaging. So he, of course, took off right away. And shortly thereafter, I met Caroline. Caroline Moise is the director of the upcoming film, Keto Is Key. She's the director. She and I are producing it together. And she walked into Dr. Seyfried's lab one day, and she was ready to interview him for her upcoming documentary that she'd already been working on for more than a year. She and I got together, and we started to co-produce. We got together on a personal level. She's my girlfriend now, and we also started to co-produce the film. So we found so much synergy with one another. And so we're coming to the end of the production. We hope to be done with the film at the end of March of this year, so another few weeks. And then we'll begin the release strategy. It won't be available for people to view at home on their streaming platforms for many months, maybe the end of the year or perhaps even early 7. But we're going through many different conversations now with folks like yourselves as well. We're talking about, hey, can we maybe come out to Ireland and do a screening where we get 100 people who are interested, come watch the film, and then maybe do Q&A afterwards with the director, with maybe one of the doctors in the film, if that's possible. Nobody in our film is located in Ireland, but hey, I mean, Dr. Seyfried travels, I know, for conferences and things, so that's a possibility. But we're really excited about the ability to bring all of these voices, like you talked about, Tony, together. Dr. Pradeep Jimnadas, Dr. Seyfried, of course.
Oh, Pradeep, he's so cool.
Yeah, Dr. Anna Rosa, who I know you have a relationship with as well. So Dr. Robert, so gifted in delivering this information as well. Dr. Sivas down in Florida. Dr. Bob, she's a superstar in this realm. So we bring all these voices together. And like you said at the beginning, what we noticed from interacting and interviewing with all of these folks is that they're all advocating for getting the body into a state of ketosis. Now, when you restrict calories or you fast or you eat carnivore or you do some sort of behavior that generates ketones, I think what it is about ketosis is it's something that we can measure at home. Right? There are blood markers that are important. Insulin, we want to keep that low. So many different things that we can look at in blood. But ketones, number one, they're a fuel. They're an efficient fuel that the brain and the heart love to use to generate energy. And from a cancer perspective, cancer cells cannot use ketones effectively to reproduce. So that's the cancer perspective. But all of these doctors were talking about how important it is and how therapeutic it is to produce ketones, whether it's because you want to reverse diabetes, whether it's because you have polycystic ovarian syndrome, whether it's because you want to avoid or prevent dementia. So many of these chronic illnesses that we're all dealing with in our family are the result of metabolic dysfunction, and the production of ketones is really can be seen as the stem of the metabolic state that you want to be in to resolve these things.
No kidding. I mean, that whole pantheon, we'll call them, it's wild when you look at how they've all got their own philosophies, but there's one uniting thing, even if they don't say it is, that's ketosis. And I mean, I remember Anthony Chaffee, who you have in the documentary, was saying, I started low carb and I started reading because it sparked something in me, like learning about insulin and learning about how there's an alternative fuel source. But when you really scale it back to us we're born in ketosis, and this is a natural 100%. State that we have forgotten or have been, fooded out with the narratives. And that's where I came to this realization a long time ago that how are we so wrong about our food what is food, and, you know, this push to, you know, 40% of your diet being refined grains and carbohydrates and fiber, and this ketosis being so powerful in so many ways. It's wild how, you know, you put together. And that leads me to, I want to ask you a question. When you first approached experts and researchers, did they come to you, or did you seek them out, and how was the response when you found them?
Yeah, the response is really good. I think partly because Caroline has already directed 2 documentaries. She won a couple of awards for her second one, and I think that gives her some leverage when she's talking to people. But more equal to that is how interested these folks are in delivering this message, because there is no like grand platform to speak this message out. We talked about some of the bigger names, bigger YouTube channels like Dr. Berg, for instance. He's a great megaphone for people in this community. But I think and again, it goes back to what I said at the beginning, or maybe what I said previously in Selena's conversation, is that people are so welcoming in this community. I think you see that in young budding communities that aren't necessarily the majority, or far from majority as keto practitioners and carnivores. So when you get this small community, people are looking for a way to get the word out. Even someone as even someone as credible as Dr. Seyfried, who's like, you know, I see him as the world's leading researcher in cancer as a metabolic disease. You'd think, oh, maybe he's not so accessible, but he's just like us in the sense that he's got all of this incredible information about how cancer cells function, but he feels like people aren't listening. So he's looking for ways to get the message out. So he's on podcasts, and I think when he hears that someone's making a film, I think that catches his attention as well. And of course, I had an existing relationship with him. So overall, people have been open. And I know Dr. Seyfried as well. He is, I mean, you'll see him on podcasts on YouTube where there are like 100 views on the video. Just the podcast is still growing, or you're in the infancy. Then you'll see him on podcasts where there are like 1 million views. So he's also very generous with his time, but I think it speaks to how enthusiastic all of these folks are, all of these doctors and professionals are about spreading the word.
Yeah, no, and with Thomas Seyfried, like
it's good to see.
When I saw him, like, this is when you see somebody who, he was almost in tears. I can't remember what interview I saw with him, who he was with, but explaining how 1,600 people a day in the U.S. are dying, and I can help them. You know, he's not promising anything except for, I know I can help them. And it's like when you see these people come out like and speak with so much passion, and you know, it's really important. And I have I'm like, why doesn't this guy have a Nobel Prize? That's where I'm at. Like this should be. I think actually Paul Mason said that one time on Low Carb Down Under when they had Thomas Seyfried on. And I know I don't want to, like, it's not all about Thomas Seyfried, but this is, in my opinion, he should be a household name. And it's like, and I know in your story how you came across and you got a chance to work with him. And I mean, that just shows that these people care. And, you know, I think the difference, we kind of talked a bit about this with Dr. Berg being, you know, I think we have to worry about business. And I think the business of medicine gets in the way. And every time we seem to have a very powerful conversation about the business of health or the business of disease, the algorithms don't tend to work for you, which is kind of interesting, especially on the smaller channels, which is, I find it quite weird. And I've had strikes from just talking about my experience with cancer, which is, you know, I know this documentary isn't just about that, but the funny thing is it ties into everything. And
it does.
Absolutely.
Just one comment on that as well, Tony, because it's dovetailing off your point, is that Dr. Seyfried himself has said many times that metabolic dysfunction, mitochondrial dysfunction in the cell is the root of so many chronic illnesses. He has chosen in his career years ago, he chose to approach that problem through the lens of cancer because of how widespread and problematic it is in our society. But if you want, and he said this, if you want to take a similar approach, but directed at diabetes or directed at heart disease, you could do that as well, or psychiatric disorders as well. But Dr. Seyfried has chosen to devote his work to cancer, but it's so closely adjacent to other chronic illnesses as well.
And you know, when you look at like Sean O'Mara, who's in the documentary, like this is another guy, like, you know, it's visceral fat, and Dr. Ana Rosa as well. Visceral fat is an indicator. It's trackable, it's measurable. And when you adopt a ketogenic anything diet, you can see the visceral fat go on. So if you have, you know, you take all these things in, the mitochondrial, the visceral fat, ketosis, you can track these things, and not just your normal blood work. This is stuff that can be specifically and how do you feel about that? Like, should people be like your experience with, especially with your mom, should this be part of a mainstream medicine? Can we do that? Is this what we're trying to achieve? Being able to track visceral fat, be in nutritional ketosis. You know,
yes. I think with when it comes to testing for prophylactic reasons, especially with glioblastoma, it's really, glioblastoma is devastating. Apparently it comes on very quickly and it spreads very quickly. I mean, unless you're doing a test scan every few months, you could miss the onset of glioblastoma from a screening perspective. With that being said, I think a lot of people find it difficult to stay in ketosis for a long time. You got birthday parties, weddings, you got other events that come up. People gather around food and around sugar and things. And, you know, we're, I think, extreme in the sense, you know, I'll speak for myself. I know Brian as well. Tony, I haven't talked to you as much about your diet, but there are a lot of folks in this community who've gone like zero sugar, you know, really low carbs, under 20 grams in some cases. But for people who aren't willing to go far right away, I think it's interesting to maybe ask yourself, like, well, could I get into a state of ketosis for, like, you know, 2 months out of the year? Find a time where, like, I don't have birthday parties, there's no holiday coming up, nothing to like, you know, I'm not going to succumb to any temptation. Because if you're restricting, again, if you're lowering the glucose level, which is eventually going to bring down the insulin level in your blood as well, you're going to start producing ketones, and you're going to get perhaps some of those therapeutic benefits. Maybe not as much as someone who's chronically in ketosis. I don't know if...
Right, can I chime in?
Yeah, please, Brian.
We have been studying this stuff, Tony and I and yourself. We've been looking at this stuff for quite a while, and this chase for ketosis seems to be a big thing. And I'm not so sure or certain that it needs to be as dominant in our you know, state of being. You know, my handle is the hunter-gatherer mindset. So I'm not so sure that it has to be, that we have to be in ketosis all the time, if you get my drift. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I agree.
I don't think, like, everybody seems to be chasing for ketosis, and I'm not certain if that's the natural state of being. But it's just up for chat.
I'm glad you brought that up. And I mean, to be transparent, I don't ketosis 7 days out of the week, 365 days out of the year. I see.
Yeah, I mean, people buy these flipping monitors for glucose and ketos, and but you know, they have all these monitors for everything and all these apps for all this kind of stuff. We didn't evolve with these things, in my opinion. Okay. We evolved to get the hunt when we could get the hunt. Sometimes didn't get the hunt, and we scraped for tubers or some berries or whatever. And we fasted. Exactly. You got it, Tony. I'm not making an argument against ketosis, but I think it's a bigger question. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. And sorry to jump in on you there. I wanted to say that I also personally, I value muscle mass as well. And I see like a certain amount of caloric intake and a certain amount of protein intake as being fundamental 100%. To developing and maintaining muscle. And it can be difficult to maintain body weight, to maintain muscle if you're chronically in ketosis. And I try to make that distinction. So I'm glad you brought this point up. For the way I came to all of this is through my ill mother. And so when I think about ketosis and the use of it, I see it as a therapy for people who are battling or who are in the midst of, who are looking at cancer, diabetes. This is where you really get the opportunity to go full board with ketosis. But I mean, I don't want people to tend to wonder, oh, this guy's making a film about keto. Is he always in ketosis?
Yeah.
I'm seldom in ketosis. I see myself as a young, healthy,
You don't have to.
with skeletal muscle mass, and I like to get enough protein and have enough calories to sustain my workouts, to sustain a lot of the different physical demands I put on my body. So I think there's a difference between ketosis as a therapy for someone who's battling a chronic illness, and maybe ketosis as an intermittent practice for someone trying to prevent illness.
Well, yeah, and I think there's a lot of stuff like when our bodies naturally would have been in and out of ketosis because of what Brian was mentioning, because of the hunt or whatever, the gather, either way.
Yeah.
But I think the problem with a lot of this stuff is it gets muddy because people start accusing ketosis is dangerous, and they don't understand, because like when you start learning about ketones, all of a sudden the ketoacidosis comes into effect, where that's sort of it's not really relevant mostly to most people that aren't type 1 diabetic anyway. And I mean, Peter, it's too bad he wasn't here. He's a co-host. He's a type 1 diabetic, and he's in and out of ketosis all the time. And he has to track his glucose, and he has to inject insulin. So he's doing these things that we all really should be doing, but his body doesn't produce insulin. But it's still all these sort of, you get into the weeds when people start, you have to track ketones. I'm a big believer, and I did. I'm a former pre-diabetic. I'm not anymore. I was
congratulations.
And I did it with a ketogenic diet, man. Like, this was a conversation with a doctor. She said, you will be full-blown type 2 diabetes within 5 to 10 years. There's nothing you can do about it. You just got to start managing. And I was like, I'm not eating sugar. There's no way. I tracked my ketones. I tracked my glucose, put on CGMs. I was like, every little piece of food that I was putting in, tracking. I realized eventually that I just had to eat real food and eat it in the amount that made me feel good. And I noticed the ketosis. I can feel it now when I'm in ketosis. I'm now aware of my body when it's in ketosis. And it's, so I think what you're saying too is like, there's a therapeutic definite place for getting into therapeutic ketosis. But I'm of the opinion that it should be natural, and it's a natural thing. And I'm not opposed to tracking it and getting people aware of it's not bad to be in ketosis. I think keto is the key, right? And good things happen.
Yeah. Tony, I'm going to keep coming back to my handle, man. Ketosis happens in a natural way if that's what's required by the body, in my opinion. Okay. If that's how it works out with the hunt or with the gather or whatever the hell you want to call it. But I think that, yes, ketosis is very, very important. We don't need sugar in the story. We need to run on ketones. And you're 100% correct in that. And Kyle, I'm sorry if I jumped in on something you were about to say.
No. No. I've got this beautiful.
Sorry, I just got this beautiful hunter-gatherer moment in my head, and I'm sorry if I stopped you in your tracks.
Please, no.
Kyle, where are you located? Just for
right now, we're down here in Monterrey, Mexico.
Oh, nice.
Got this beautiful view. It's about
cool.
80 degrees, 30 degrees Celsius or so. I got this beautiful view. So sometimes I just look off and get the sunlight in my eyes as I'm listening to Brian here and Tony. So we're down here in Mexico finishing up the film. We're both, Caroline, the director, and I are both from the Northeast. She's from Montreal. I was born in Connecticut.
Oh, right on.
We were hoping to say hi to Caroline. Just tell her we said hello.
Yeah, she wants to be here. We'll get her once she's locked in the editing room trying to get this film done.
Okay.
So once the cut's done, we'll get her outside and talk.
Okay, once you get the zip ties off her, yeah. Okay.
Actually, so we're gonna get back into the actual production of this film. What was the biggest obstacle? What was the hardest thing to get all this stuff, to get this done to the point where you're editing? We're gonna talk about some of that too.
Yeah, I mean, making a movie requires there are so many different pieces involved. I mean, so coordinating the entire production is a significant project. It's taken more than 2 years. I mean, you look at, we've done all of these interviews. We've interviewed, I think it's 11 researchers and medical doctors, and then a handful of their patients as well. Just about every one of those interviews has happened in a different city. Once in a while, we get lucky. We do 2 in San Diego, for instance. But most of the interviews happen in the film has been shot in the United States, Canada, Turkey, India, and Australia. So that in itself has been a mission. And then
I can imagine.
Music, for instance, there's music that goes along with the that's being composed from scratch. There are animations, 3D animations that we're coordinating with a great animator who lives in Germany. There's a time difference there. You got the coordination that needs to take place, sound mixing. So the bringing a film, when you turn on the TV at night and you turn on Netflix or Hulu and you see a film, it looks and sounds at a certain level that takes a lot of people to get to that level, the color, the lighting, the audio. So I think coordinating all of that, and then also, really being diligent about the science itself and listening deeply into the interview with Dr. Gemnadas, for instance, was about 3 hours. So you have to take those 3 hours, and at the end, by the time the 90 or 100, 110 minute film is done, Dr. Gemnadas isn't going to be in there for 3 hours. He's not even going to be for half an hour. So you have to really find what is the meat of the story that he's telling, and how does it link with what Dr. Gemnadas, what Dr. Slocum is telling, what Dr. Seyfried is telling. So finding that the powerful and most truthful storyline as well.
Yeah, because that was my next question, actually. Like, when you have hours of interviews from experts, like, how do you decide what makes the final cut without, that must be an art in itself. You got to have story. You still have to be entertaining,
Yes.
So
and Caroline will love to talk about this once she's done with the film, because she's the editor, she's the director, and she, while I sit sometimes to the computer and give my input on the edit, she's the person who makes the story and finds it's the balance between the truthful story and the best story, right? And that's always trying and making sure.
Well, it has to be impactful.
Yes.
All of the clips that you've sent me have been impactful. They've been powerful. It's the music, the editing, and conversation that comes out. I think it's amazing what you're doing, guys. It really is.
That's why I enjoy going live, because live you don't have to edit. Like, editing is tough. Even a 10-minute YouTube video, man. I can't imagine doing, with all these inspirational people talking about this stuff and trying to whittle it down to the stuff, man. I feel for Caroline for sure. It'll be nice to see, how this all puts up, because if the trailers are any indication, you got this, it's impactful. It's creating the, I can't wait to see this now. So that's good.
Yes. Great. Yeah.
They've got it nailed, Tony, to be honest with you. It's powerful.
This is a little bit different of a question, but do you see Keto Is Key as a diet film, or is this about human health, or is this even deeper, where who controls against the narratives? Where do you feel it's?
I see this as a film about healing, and a film about understanding what information we need to be looking at in order to help ourselves heal. So we talk about, you could look at, talk about ketosis from a preventative standpoint, or you could talk about it from a therapeutic standpoint. And our film focuses in on the people who have sat in an oncologist's office and have been told some of the worst news that you could be told. And they had the courage. One of them, for instance, one guy in our film was advised by his oncologist to have his prostate removed. And he had the courage to say to himself, you know what, I'm going to go home and I'm going to look around on my own. I'm going to dig through some of these scientific papers. I'm going to go on YouTube. I'm going to understand what is this disease at its core, and what other research, what other developing knowledge is out there. And then it takes courage to tell the oncologist no, and then to have to face your family members and explain to them why you told the oncologist no, and that you're taking your own path. but that it's backed up by some of the best science that you can find. And so those stories of courage are a big part of our film. And then learning from these doctors, like Dr. Gymnatis is so informative about how can you analyze your own blood analysis to understand how to adjust your lifestyle to maximize your health.
I think that's kind of, where you get into, how do you feel about when you guys doing this, putting this project together, how do you feel when you hear stuff like trust the science and don't do your own research, just trust the science? What's your take on all that?
Interesting, right? It's an interesting phrase in general, trust the science, because you could interpret it many different ways. You read Dr. Seyfried's research, Dr. D'Agostino's research, you have the choice to trust that as well. It's challenging. I mean, you could find papers that tell you that cancer is a genetic disease, and they've been referenced 100,000 times in other scientific studies. And you think to yourself, well, this must be the most veritable scientific source that's in existence. And the NCI, the National Cancer Institute, tells us that cancer is a genetic disease. That's why I try to make it simple, like you do, Brian. I try to ask myself, like, where did we come from, and what did forget about our ancestors, forget about our grandparents, right? Because they lived in more or less a similar environment to us. But if you were to imagine, what is it like 10 generations ago? What did they have access? Just think about it. Go outside and like the sun came up, and then what happened? How did they find shelter? How did they find food? And if you could try to it's taken us this far. It's taken us this far. We don't. Who knows how many generations?
Exactly.
Right.
When you look at the entire course of humanity, you realize that the last couple of 100 years is only a little blip in our evolution. It's only a little blip. And our bodies have evolved in the way that they did. And they hunted and they gathered, and that's kind of it. I'm not going to go into the depths of it. We can talk about fruit in winter and all that bullshit, but we hunted and we ate meat for most of it. It's proven. There is no argument. It's proven. It's in the bones. It's in the evidence. It's in the archaeological, all of that. Yeah, and keep coming at me, vegans. I'm going to keep saying this, and I was going to change my handle, Tony. I think you heard me recently as well saying that I might change my handle, but I'm not going to.
Well, I think it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. I was thinking about it because I recently got certified as a carnivore coach, and
nice.
No, I'm not changing it.
Good. You don't want
nobody else is getting it. Sorry.
What was the hardest obstacle? What did you find the hardest thing about putting this all together?
Getting into India, maybe.
Okay.
Caroline being from Canada and me being from the US, you need a visa in order to get into India. Anybody who comes from North America needs to apply in advance, get a visa. So we were already in Paris. We went to an event in Paris called Neuro Keto, a really deep scientific event with a lot of professors and researchers who were presenting their data about ketogenesis and its effect on childhood epilepsy and other things. But we went there, and now we're going to head over to Mumbai, and we submitted the visa application, and it took more than 10 days for the application to come back. And we were looking into some of the history between Canada and the recent history diplomatically between Canada and India. And there have been a few events here or there that caused some friction between the two countries. So we got stuck in Istanbul because, we were already in Paris. So we were probably at that point about a 12-hour flight from Mumbai. And we said to ourselves, all right, let's go halfway and let's get to Istanbul, where we were fortunate enough to be able to find unexpectedly Dr. Abdul Slocum, who's treating cancer patients.
Istanbul.
In Istanbul. And so we interviewed him and he became part of the film. It was just one of these serendipitous moments where it just added so much power to the film, and it came by accident because we weren't to Mumbai immediately. We had to stop in Istanbul, and now Dr. Slocum, who's not very well known in these circles, is doing some extremely hands-on work with cancer patients who have faced bleak outlooks and have used his therapeutic methods, which are inspired by Dr. Seyfried's research.
Yes, I've heard Dr. Seyfried speak about Istanbul, like the whole the going there because they're way ahead of the US as far as, in his opinion. And I think you just verified that. Like, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's very difficult in the US.
Wow.
Maybe you guys know, to get approval for new treatments. So the FDA is very strict. You have to appeal to an IRB, Institutional Review Board, to get the allowance to use substances in human trials. Then you have to go through double-blind studies. So it's very difficult to get to the finish line with new treatments. And for that reason, it makes it difficult to practice in the US. I mean, on one hand, you look at, like, we're kind of like safeguarded against scientific practices that may not be studied, but at the same time, you have these new opportunities in therapy, in these new therapies that can't get through as
and
quickly
I
as you need them to.
actually find it very, I don't know what you want to call it, convenient that the drug that I believe Dr. Thomas Seyfried uses is Dawn, and it's an off-label drug that isn't, there's no money there, right? So why would they approve? It's wild when you hear how that all came about, and it's like, it just makes so much sense to the people that understand it. And that's where the business comes in, right? It's all. Speaking of business, have you had any pushback from any of the people that you presented this to? What was the feedback from the people that aren't in the low carb space or the keto space?
Well, I mean, we've approached a lot of doctors and researchers in the space. So pushback, I think, at maybe just at like a community level, when you try to share this with people in your community, try to share the benefits of eating this way. People have their various reasons as to why, or maybe they have their addictions. Dr. Robert Sivas talks about carb addiction. It's really difficult, and it's not. I don't think it's really the fault necessarily of the individual. It is at some level, right? At some level, you have to take control for what you put in your mouth and how your health moves forward. But if you look at it from a slightly different perspective, we're inundated with all of these carbohydrates and highly processed foods. And you have to be so intentional, as you both know from doing this, you have to be so intentional about shopping you go into the grocery store and like only 15% of the grocery store is accessible to you if you want to if you want to eat a keto diet, if you want to eat a carnivore diet. So honestly, when you put yourself in the position of the person who hasn't read the literature, a person who doesn't have an Instagram channel, who doesn't know Dr. Seyfried, they have other things on. They have their job, their kids, their lives, and it's really difficult because our society is not committed to helping people maximize their health through dietary methods.
Yeah, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And it's just, now I was walking into the supermarket the other day with my girl, and we're walking in, and I'm like, do you notice the vegetables don't smell like anything anymore? Like, you used to walk into a farmer's market, and I'm like, I'm walking to the meat anyway, but I'm walking through the vegetables. I'm like, you used to be able to smell the vegetables. Like, I'm thinking, like, holy cow, you can still smell the bread, but none of that stuff, it doesn't even resonate with me anymore. Like, you just walk through the aisles to get to the place you're going, but you're a walking commercial when you walk into these stores, and that's all it is. It's just bright lights and fancy packaging.
Can I just say something?
Go ahead, Brian. Yeah, please.
I think it was Dr. Sean Baker. I was on his podcast recently, and he asked me, what's the one downside of being carnivore? Okay, I know it's not exactly the whole keto thing, but what's the one downside of being carnivore? And I had to think about it for a second, and I said, I see sick people.
Oh.
Do you remember that movie?
Yeah.
I see dead people.
Yeah. Sixth Sense.
Right. I see sick people. Yeah. I see sick people everywhere. There are Zimmer frames. There are these people with these motorized scooters or whatever they are, and people in agony absolutely everywhere. And it's so annoying and heartbreaking to watch.
Well, I feel you do. I feel
you follow them through the supermarkets, and you realize what's in their cart is absolutely junk. And it's so difficult to hold back and say nothing. It really is so difficult. And to walk down the street, I mean, I posted, it's been a while back, so it's a long way down my page, but I took a photograph off my balcony. I think I was in a little town in Amsterdam or close to it. And there were 5 mobility scooters on the street just below my balcony on a Saturday. and there was like 2 or 3 Zimmer frames around it. And that was just a typical Saturday kind of market day, whatever. And it just breaks my heart to see this shit going on, Tony and Kyle.
No,
and that's why I'm so behind Keto Is Key movie. And that's I'm going to leave it at that now. And that's my rant over, guys.
Well, I feel the same way because I'm a breathwork coach and I teach people how to breathe, and I'm watching the people in the general public that are laboring for breath, just living like, and it's sad. And I'm sure, Kyle, now that you learn this information and you just want to, and I think when you were with the carnivore community, you were mentioning a little bit about it. Maybe we can talk about it, but wanting to go help everybody, but you got to be sort of reserved and let them come to you. Can you, like, knowing what you know, how do you sort of navigate? I think I know the answer because I've heard it earlier, but I would love everybody to hear your sort of take on it. When people come to you, how do you feel about family, and what do you sort of?
Well, I mean, coming from breath work, I'm sure you have some overlap with meditation at some point in yoga.
I just meditated before to get into this, and it was like, let's get zen. Yeah.
And when you get into trying to understand Buddhism, I don't know how anyone can really understand it. It's such a deep and complex philosophy. But one of the takeaways that I've done some yoga, done some meditation, and I've tried to connect with the importance of non-judgment. And I think that's really important, no matter where you are in life. And I want to make sure I'm not saying that I'm the best at non-judgment. I also sometimes catch myself advising family members who aren't seeking my advice, and because of all this information that I've gathered in the last couple of years about diet and about disease and about how to reverse it. So I think that's something I try to keep in mind, is that it's an edict for me, just in general, is that I want to try to not judge the next person, because I'm not them. I don't know what they're going through. I don't know what they're dealing with in their life, and so that's important. But if you embody it enough, then 1 person out of 10 maybe will come to you and say, hey, I noticed your hair looks really good, your skin looks clearer, like I could see your muscles, like I noticed that you seem to be really healthy. What are you doing? And you take the opportunity to help that 1 person or those 2 people that come to you, because there's of course the old saying, you can't help someone who doesn't want to be helped. And I think that's important. And the other thing that I think is really important too is people shut you off really quickly, whether you're talking about economics, about keto, or you're talking about religion. If you try to bring it to someone who's not there to hear it, then they're going to tune you out really quickly. So I think non-judgment and just living it, and then someone will step forth and say, hey, I want to know more about what you're doing.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. You got to be the example. That's what we keep saying in this space. And, Tony, you know that too. We just got to be the example, show up, and just shut up and just do it.
Well, I think it's important for people to find their way, and that's where this information that you're going to be putting out with Keto Is Key it's an aspect, it's a perspective, and it's hopefully a powerful perspective that it will change people's lives. And that's 1 person at a time. That's where our other Mark sort of put this together. It's too bad that he was busy, but he couldn't be here. But he says that all the time. He's like, we don't care about views, we don't care about this. That 1 person that something resonates or possibly changes their life.
That's all it takes.
That's I think that's why we all do this. And I enjoy this. This leads me to my next question for you, because I enjoy talking about this stuff. I love the science. I love relating it to real life and human stuff. When you were talking and filming all these doctors, was there a certain point, something you learned or something that you heard that was like, whoa, that changed, like completely changed your life?
Yeah, many things. Well, learning from Dr. Roshni Sangani in Mumbai, I told the story about going to Mumbai. We went there to interview Dr. Sangani, and to see that she is helping vegans, people who don't eat meat in India, lower their hemoglobin A1C by like from 9 down to 6, for instance. And like they're getting into that territory where what you achieved, Tony, was reversing pre-diabetes, and they're able to do it without eating meat because of their beliefs, right? So that was really powerful to see her be able to achieve that. So many. I told the story earlier in the carnivore community about Dr. Seyfried, who's had patients who, after a short period of time in a ketogenic diet, we're talking about, women who are menopausal coming out of menopause. That's, imagine, think about how powerful that is,
wicked.
Human vitality perspective. So many. Dr. Boz also talks about how, a lot of people who may be, let's say, I don't know, the typical middle-aged person in the United States, for instance, who's a little bit overweight, but more or less, doesn't show any glaring signs of disease. Even if a person who's, got a bit of fat on them, if they're pricking their finger in the morning and testing their glucose and they see that it's more or less normal, it's good. It's a good start. But what Dr. Boz told us is that what they don't know is that their insulin, the amount of insulin pancreas might have to be producing, and you're not going to know just by testing their glucose, right? They might have to be producing in order to control that glucose, could be very, very high, could be at an unsafe level. So because we don't really have technology at the moment for people to test their insulin at home instantly.
Apparently it's coming out. I've heard that they're working on that. That would be, I don't know how groundbreaking.
That would be great.
We test
excellent for the time being. According to Dr. Boz, you can test your ketones. If you're producing ketones 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, something like that in a moderate range, then it's a good proxy to know that your insulin is in a healthy range. So many pieces of valuable information from these experts.
Was there anything?
Even though I appreciate that, take it back 10,000 years. How many glucose monitors did we have?
Well, I'll tell you what, 10,000 years, how much glucose?
No.
Would have been 2 months
a year.
Right.
And I think that's a big.
Just my 2 cents. Go ahead.
Was there anybody that you were interviewing or that actually changed what you eat? Like you specifically changed your diet in accounts to what they said?
Let's see. Is there anybody that interviewed? Well, Dr. Seyfried really introduced me to the power of low carb. And Dr. Seyfried doesn't really talk about he's not a low carb advocate. He's just looking at cancer cells and saying, hey, this is what the cancer cells are consuming. Let's bring this stuff down in order to restrict cancer cells. But he really, from his work, I started to understand glucose and insulin. And so I think engaging with his work led me to value protein. I think if I were to look back at myself 5 years ago, I wasn't eating enough protein, probably wasn't eating enough calories either. Someone who's probably underweight. I know some people may roll their eyes listening to that because we're in the minority, these folks who are prone to being underweight. But I think valuing protein and valuing eating fat and protein and eating it consistently and regularly. Not to say you can't fast for 36 hours or skip a meal here or there, but just prioritizing my diet. I think that came from Dr. Seyfried, Dr. D'Agostino too. Dr. D'Agostino is a genius when it comes to formulating diets and explaining the science behind why.
Yeah, he's his work with exogenous ketones. I think he even made the sardine fasting thing happen. I think so. Big thing. I still can't do it. I don't know. I'm not a big fish guy. I try to eat seafood once in a while, but not for me. So when you're talking to these doctors and for what was usually the average time that you have to condense? Like how long would be, you sit down with somebody, do you just let them talk? Do you have organized questions, or is it more of just, let's see what happens?
Yeah, we have questions organized in advance, and we usually have a topic that we want the expert to speak to. So Dr. Boz her work is largely about glucose and insulin control. She talks about that, and she talks about how powerful that can be for people to reverse disease. So when we start, again, it comes back to the end story. When we start to see the narrative that we want to build and that we want to be the baseline of the final film, okay, we say, who can speak to those various plot points, if you will, if you think about it like a narrative arc. So Dr. Boz, we want to really focus on insulin, for instance. And then as the project progresses, we get to, let's say, interview number 8, 9, 10. Now we know, okay, we have specific, let's say, gaps in the narrative that we want our next expert to be able to speak to. And that's why Dr. D'Agostino was one of the last people that we interviewed, and his breadth of knowledge in this field is so wide that he was a great expert to have towards the end of the interview lineup, because he's not focused on just one subset of metabolism. Yeah, he can talk about cancer, talk about insulin. He could talk about exogenous ketones for neuroprotection. He's so vast in his ability to speak to these things. So we really formulated our questions to have him help us fill in the narrative. Yes, we do come with the questions in advance. That's also Caroline spearheads that part of the project. And then, the conversation, as you guys know from having these podcasts, the conversation takes off, and then you don't know until listening to it afterwards which part are the richest, and then you're always thinking about like what's the story that we want to build, and how do we make it strong.
Nice. Was there anybody that you wanted to you really wanted to have on but just didn't work out?
Dr. Fung, in 2016, he came. He was one of the first to bring fasting to the mainstream with some of the work that he did. It would have been interesting to have his take.
That was one of the first books I read, Obesity Code.
Yes, the Obesity Code, right?
My life.
You can't get in touch with everyone, and these people are busy as well. They're doing their own important work. So you try to we knew about Dr. Barry, we knew about Sean Baker, Dr. Baker, but and at the same time, sometimes we know, for instance, if we have somebody to talk about the carnivore diet, then maybe we can go to someone else to talk about insulin, and go to someone else to talk about cancer, to try to add dynamism to the story. So that's important as well. Yeah. But there are many powerful voices. We couldn't get to all of them, and you can't fit them all in, because if you have 25 people who've interviewed, now each guy or each woman or each doctor ends up with a very small slice of the final.
It loses effect, I'd imagine.
Sure.
It does.
And by any stretch, I'm not saying the Pantene that you didn't get wasn't good. That's a
of course
star magical. Every single name that comes up on the trailer, I'm just like, yes. It's awesome, man. That's one of the things that I was like, I'm really looking forward to seeing how you guys actually tell that story, because it's an important one, in my opinion. There was something I kind of wanted to touch on is, when this gets released, how does that work? Are you putting it out, selectively? Does it go into, are you pitching it to different streaming sites? Or I don't know how the film industry works, but how are you sort of navigating this? Are you just specifically sticking with the health space? Or are you trying to, go after the normies, so to speak?
Yeah, great question. Every industry has its own paths and loopholes and nuances. So yeah, I mean, with film, you finish the film, and then the two most traditional, and it's funny to refer to streaming as traditional. It's only been around for 10 or 15 years, but at this point, it's the two most traditional ways to get your film out there are, number one, to have theatrical distribution, where you put the film in theaters, like old school to AMC. You walk in on a Friday night, sit down and see the film. So that's one way to get the film out there. We're working right now with a theatrical distributor. I can't say much more about it because we don't have anything in place, but we'll be happy to announce that when it comes to fruition, to get the film into theaters across the United States, maybe on like an opening weekend or something like that. And then I've also been approached by a couple distributors who are interested in pitching the film to, your big streamers. I don't want to get anyone too excited, but the Netflix, the Hulu, all the, and we've been, as we keep our finger on the pulse of the industry, we understand that these streamers are interested in health content. They want movies and documentaries about health and well-being, because it's a rising tide in our society. Take a look at the current administration in the United States, and that's so we're optimistic about that. We're optimistic that these major streaming platforms are interested in this stuff and that we can get it to them. But before both of those phases, before the theatrical and before the digital release, we want to bring people who we know are passionate about these things. So that partnering with guys like yourself, or partnering with some of the doctors in our film to hold screenings, this type of thing, because we feel like there are a lot of people who are already keyed into the keto and carnivore and fasting communities, and so we want to make sure we get it to them.
Yeah, and I mean, I think an important thing is just it's an option, and it's something that people being aware of, that it's not dangerous, it's not taboo, it's not just a diet. I think that's where we can sort of all help to try and get to people. Because I mean, we've all had it. I know Brian has. You try and lead by example, and it's just people don't want to hear it, or they want to hear it in their own time. If you start saying, you got to cut out carbohydrates, people don't realize how deep it goes. But that's that's probably, we could probably have a podcast on each of these individual topics, because it's just, there's so much to go over. When are we looking sort of to like ballpark? I know it's editing is its own animal, and it's like it's going to happen at its own time, but is there a deadline, or are you just sort of seeing how it goes?
Well, we're fortunate to be independent filmmakers, meaning that we luckily don't have a deadline from it. There's no studio associated with our film, so there's no deadline imposed on us. That being said, we know that the science moves quickly, and we want to get this information out there because we want people to know what Dr. Seyfried said about this in late 2025, for instance, before time moves too quickly. I would say end of the year 2026 is when people will be able to sit on their couch, open up, turn on their TV, and find it on a streaming platform. But we'll have other opportunities for people to see it prior to that.
Is there any way that people can sort of get a hold of you to help you out? How's the funding aspect work? Because if people would be, I know a lot of people in the space are very generous with good ideas and really trying to push this movement. So
yeah,
is there any place where they can reach you guys anyway?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that. Yeah, on Instagram, Keto Is Key movie on Instagram.
And we'll link all those for sure. Like, we're going to link all the.
Oh, great. Yeah, thank you. We have. I want to also mention, because we do have. I mean, when my mom got sick back in the beginning of 2024, one of the products that I used right away to understand her blood ketones levels was Keto Mojo. Yeah. And so when I got involved in this project with Caroline, I remember that, hey, there's one brand out there that I really want to go to and see if they're interested in partnering with us, because I know that a lot of people in the community use this product, and I know that we used it when my mom got sick. So we approached Keto Mojo, and Dorian Greenow and his wife Gemma, they run the company. They've sponsored us. Awesome. So you'll see them associated with us as we go forward. Yeah, we're always open to other ideas though as well when it comes to distribution, sponsorship, appearances. We need all of that. Just like the rest of us here in this community, we want to get it out there as far and wide.
Awesome. Well, you've got a couple allies here, and anything we can do to help you get out there, because I mean, this in my opinion, it's not only groundbreaking filmmaking, but it's necessary to get this aspect, this perspective out to as many people as possible. Make them, you still have a choice, but learning about these things, and especially the doctors that you guys have had or interviewed or been part of this, powerhouses. And it's just, I'm a big believer in outliers. I like it when people are compelled to do something, yourself with your story, with your mom, when you're inspired to do something, be part of something, because you just are. A lot of times we get ridiculed or blacklisted for that. And I think those are the powerful, it's not the people, it's what they're saying. And I think you guys have a great message. Every clip, every sort of thing that Brian sort of gave to us, it's awesome. The trailers are great. So I'm really looking forward to it. But I mean, you guys, whatever I can do to help you, whatever the Meat of the Matter can do. And I know the carnivore community is right behind you. You got a great live. What would be the ultimate success for this in your eyes, in your perspective? What would be the success?
Yeah.
Hollywood.
I mean, well, I mean, in terms of distribution, of course, it'd be to get it onto the streaming platforms and have people see it and get really excited about it. That would be a great success from our perspective for the message and for us as filmmakers. That being said, coming from where I come from, and Caroline also, her mother has dementia. So we're like so many people in the modern world, right? A parent with dementia, a parent with cancer, a community member with diabetes. I mean, sure, we want to do well, we want to have success. But I think the ultimate success is helping reach people who's maybe not the person themselves who has cancer, but maybe their family member who can help them. Because I know that it was difficult when I tried to dive into this at the beginning of 24, it was difficult to find the information, and it's out there, you can find it, but it takes a lot of work. And so I think there's something about a movie that we're accustomed to over the last few generations, to being able to sit down and watch it in an hour and a half or in 2 hours, you get like a really solid understanding, especially with documentary, of what the story is. Players and what can I do in this case to help my family member or myself who's dealing with a chronic illness. So at a very spiritual level, that's how I see it, is that the success would be about reaching the people who need to know this information. And like you said, it's not necessarily information from us. It's coming from these Dr. Gemnadas, Dr. Seyfried,
exactly.
these experts.
It's coming from big voices.
Yeah. Well, that's very well said, man. And I mean, I had a funny feeling I knew that answer, but it's just, these questions that people need to hear, and coming from the source is very powerful. And I think
that's what I mean. Yeah.
I think I want to respect your time, and I think I'd love to have you back on if Caroline has time too, like to have an actual, we can get into some of the finer points. I mean, this is I think that's the problem with this stuff, is we can go in all directions. I'm sure we could talk hours just, from the spiritual side to the business side of health. And
this is the intro.
Yeah.
I appreciate the questions about the filmmaking process. I know there's some people I'm sure there's some people out there listening, probably even young kids who are interested in filmmaking and impactful stories. So it's great to talk about that.
It's not just about the whole keto thing or the carnivore or whatever. It's also about the whole impact on humanity and as you say, getting kids involved and stuff like that. It's going to be so impactful. It really is.
Yeah.
And for that reason, Kyle, I mean, I've been talking to you and Caroline for a while, and it's a pleasure to meet you face to face. Yeah, I really appreciate what you're doing, and I'm going to do my best to help you out as well. I really am.
Thank you, Brian. Yeah, we feel that as well.
I'll step out of that. Yeah.
Thank you.
No, Brian, you're always like a great ambassador and connecting this up. And I mean, we had, when we first heard about this, I mean, I can speak for Mark and Peter, who are the co-hosts of our podcast, that, they're going to see this and be a little upset that they didn't get to, but that's why we should do it again. And I would love to have you back on and I want to talk about the movie side of things more, because I think you're right. I think people relate to a movie or a documentary, or, it's easy. I don't want to like minimize it, but it's easy. It's there, it's presented, and your story matters. And I think the way that you're, I understand a little bit about editing. Not many people do, but it's a daunting task to try and stay focused, tell the story, keep it relevant and keep it entertaining as well. I think that's the power of a movie. And yeah, we're right behind you, man. And so appreciative of you coming on and talking about this, because we're all passionate about the health side. But I think it's also important to push something for the people that will get exposed to it via a film. So all the power to you, man, and anything we can do to help. And Kyle, where do people find you, follow you?
Yeah, Keto Is Key movie on Instagram. You can check us out there. You can also go to ketoiskeymovie.com. You can pre-order the film if you want. It's only $10.
Well, let's pre-order it, people. Come on.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. Yeah, absolutely. So we're really excited about it when it comes. When we're done with the edit, I think we'll be ready to move into the next phase of going out and talking about it and getting Caroline involved as well, because as I said, this is really her brainchild from the beginning. So thanks for your interest. Thanks for hosting us.
Yeah, man, no worries. And like I said, we'll have you back, and anything we can do to kind of push the thing. Brian's really good about connecting people, and we appreciate you, Brian. Thank you for setting this up, and for all the people that are the Meat of the Matter supporters in the carnivore community. This is what it's all about. And if we can share this information, it's not about views, it's not about clicks, it's about giving somebody the opportunity to maybe change their life. And this stuff is powerful. Kyle, I appreciate you. I can't wait to meet Caroline. I will just, maybe if you can hang on while we stop this, we'll get all the info so we can add everything into the description and coordinate it that way. Thank you so much, Brian. Always a pleasure. Any last words, Brian? You're
Tony, no, I'm fine. I'm out. Kyle, it was a pleasure to see you again and have a good conversation with you. I'm sure we're going to have some more. So I'll talk to you again soon, okay? Yeah, Tony, I know well I'm going to talk to you again soon.
Yeah, you will, buddy. You're stuck with us. Yes.
Yeah.
For all those out there, we are the Meat of the Matter podcast. We are live every Sunday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. in the UK and Ireland, 7 p.m. in Europe and in the Netherlands. On behalf of Mark and Peter, and of course, Brian, thank you, Kyle, and all the best. Good luck. If you need any help, we are here. hopefully we see everybody soon. And thanks for watching.